I'm able to take into account what are the things that they want to learn, what are the things that they're interested in, and to create new curriculums and new classes based on those interests. So, for instance, the bread and butter that we've had for years and years and years at this point are history mysteries and dark history. That's my younger class and my older class. Well, there's a subset of kids from history mysteries who only love scary classes.
Explore the dynamic world of homeschooling, online learning, and education with the Homeschool Edu Topics podcast from the Music and Language Learning Center, hosted by Dr. Kristine Dizon. Discover innovative teaching methods, navigate the challenges of online learning, and empower parents and educators to create engaging learning environments for children. Tune in for expert interviews, insightful discussions, and practical tips to enrich your homeschooling journey.
Hello, my name is Dr. Kristine Dizon, host of Homeschool Edu Topics by the Music and Language Learning Center. Today, I'm with Nicole Pauling, founder of the Academy of Wonder, an organization that fosters a student engagement-centered environment that includes a diverse group of teachers, professionals, entertainers, and artists. The courses she teaches are created for all learners that are not typically found in other school settings and are crafted around student needs and interests. Okay, hey Nicole, how's it going?
Hi, I'm so excited to meet you. Hello, Kristine. Good to see you again.
So, with the Academy of Wonder, could you tell us a little bit more about the backstory of how you got started?
Oh my, you want the real story?
Yeah, the real story.
Okay, so pandemic. I owned the largest entertainment company at the time in my county. And we have bounce houses and face painters and balloon twisters. And we have magicians and silt walkers and, all the stuff. Just all of the fun stuff. Like anything you could have for a special event, we had that stuff. Do you know what people do not need during a global pandemic where you can't leave your house? Magicians and face painters and balloon twisters and stilt walkers and entertainers and bounce houses. Those things become immediately obsolete. The business that we had been building for, at that point, 12 years, literally ceases to function because there's no need. No one's renting those things. No one's having big events. Everyone is canceling things. People aren't even going to school. So all of the school events that we had planned and in the books and were going to be the funding for our entire year, because, we would make all of our income in a really short period of time, usually between April and October. And that would fund our entire year. And April to October was wiped off the calendar. It did not exist anymore. So I went, how am I going to make an income? How am I going to survive? How are we going to make it through? And my friend Michelle Morningstar, who I know you know, said, hey, why don't you pull out those pretty fancy degrees that you have and teach with them? And I went, what? Use my college education for something other than looking pretty on a resume? I don't understand what you even mean right now. And so that's how I ended up on OutSchool. I was like, I guess I will give it a try. And it was so scary, so frightening. The first class I had ever taught on OutSchool was my first class I had ever taught anywhere, because my educational background at that point did not include education. I had a psychology degree. I had a sociology degree. I had a minor in philosophy, a minor in religion. I had a minor in women's studies. Fantastic, lovely, wonderful things. Had absolutely nothing to do with teaching.
That's so crazy. No, because of the fact that, with the pandemic and having to shift and adapt and, being able to accept, things that are, out of your control, right? So I can only imagine how much of a time crunch that it was in order for you to be able to figure it out in the moment, right? Now, in regards to like the different classes that you offer, because the idea when I see Academy of Wonder, I think I am going to learn something wonderful, right? Could you tell us a little bit more about the different course offerings that you have?
I love that you said, I'm going to learn something wonderful, because I thought, how do we make learning magical? How does every week become something that you walk away from and you go, let me tell you what I did this week. Let me tell you about this amazing class I just took. Um, so the things that we teach are things, first of all, that we love, or things that we are passionate about. And we teach them in such a way that all students are not only welcomed and engaged, but they are successful. So I have history classes, which are amazing, unique, different than anything you can find basically anywhere. And they are taught in a way where whether you are neurotypical and just love history, or whether you have autism or ADHD or dyslexia or dysgraphia or whatever neuroatypicality you might have going on, you can be just as successful. Like, we have purposely designed all of our courses so everyone can succeed, walk away knowing the content and happy after class. And the next week they log in just as happy, just as excited, because they know it's going to be an amazing class.
That's amazing. That inclusivity, actually, being able to not just reach out to, the advanced students, because, that can be really attractive, to work with, I just want to work with all the intelligent students, right? But instead being able to create courses that, a wide variety of people would be able to take. Could you tell us, a little bit more about your feelings about that in education, this idea of inclusivity and belonging?
Sure. When I think about, all of the diverse students that there are, I tend to lump 2E students and exceptionally gifted students with having the same kinds of special needs that I would say that my autistic or ADHD students have. We typically expect way too much out of our gifted students without enough support in place for them to be really, really successful. So our classes really are designed for everyone, no matter who they are or where they are in the learning spectrum. I think that if you walk into a classroom and you feel seen, you feel included, you are part of a community, then you are able to learn better. We learn better when we feel safe. We learn better when we feel valued. We learn better when we feel seen. And those are all things that we specifically and intentionally build into our classrooms, because we want people and students to be on the right place, the right plane in their minds, so that they can walk away and not only have learned whatever the interesting thing that is that we are teaching that week, but to feel good about themselves and to feel good about their classmates. Like, all of that is intentional, and it's not something that happens accidentally in our classes. It is something that is built with intention and thoughtfulness and caring for our students.
I think that's amazing. This idea of intentional, delivery, with the idea of caring and having that type of situational awareness, right? Because, when you think about the directions of education and where they're going today, right? It's, if anything, since the pandemic, they've expanded. How do you feel when you take all these things that, we've been talking about, and how do you further grow, your courses? Do you find it, something that's valuable for you to continue expanding and things like that? And yeah.
As we find that student interests are either growing, expanding, or changing, we do take their feedback into account and then add on programs or change programs or create special programs for students as they evolve. Because not only are we evolving as teachers, but our students are evolving as students. Their interests are evolving. So, it's It's kind of silly to think that a child is going to be with you forever. And yet I've had kids with me for 4 years now because I'm able to take into account what are the things that they want to learn, what are the things that they're interested in, and to create new curriculums and new classes based on those interests. So for instance, the bread and butter that we've had for years and years and years at this point are history mysteries and dark history. That's my younger class and my older class. Well, there's a subset of kids from history mysteries who only love scary classes. They only want the dark stuff. They only want that thing that gives them that little adrenaline rush where they leave class and, they've got their stuffed animal and a blankie and, maybe a drink next to them. And they leave class and they go, that was so much fun. Like, that was a great time. And so I created a class just for those kids. And anyone else who looks at this and goes, the red class, like, what does that mean? That is a meaningless bunch of words strung together. But these kids know because they've been in history mysteries where I have all of the classes color coordinated based on their scariness level. So they all know that the red class is the scariest level of class that I offer for the younger students. And so as soon as I published that class, they're like, oh, it's finally here. Nothing but scary classes. And, it's growing and building because they're like, oh, my students are not necessarily everyone else's students.
But I think the thing is, when we think about, engaging student interest, right? When we think about, seeing, the wide variety of students of, that there are today, that have changed, right? When we think about the baby boomer time, right? It was very, black and white in regards to learning and things like that, but being able to expand the possibilities. And that sounds like what you're doing at the Academy of Wonder, Nicole. And I think that's amazing. And also too, with how you're crafting these experiences, because when we think about it, usually when we think about having to go to school or having to learn things, we think, oh man, I have to do math homework. And yeah, I have to memorize all these dates for history. Could you tell us your thoughts and feelings about how, the Academy of Wonder separates, or not separates, but perhaps takes learning in a different way for your students?
Sure. Certainly dates are important. You need to know things like, hey, when did this event happen or that event happen? But they're also very, very easy to Google. So maybe I don't need to know the exact date when the Declaration of Independence was signed. Seems important, but am I going to really practically use that ever? But what's even more important? The idea behind why we had a Declaration of Independence. If you can understand the whys and the hows of history, then you can understand the movement of society. You can understand what's happening now, what happened in the past, and what might happen in the future if you understand how what's already happened has come to be. So while dates are nice and they make us feel good because look how smart I am because I have this date memorized, it's maybe not as important as the content of your history knowledge. For us, we focus on the content of the history knowledge. We focus on the stories behind the history, and we often focus on stories that never get told in a traditional history class. We focus on the stories that you will probably never read in a typical history book. I have been talking to a lot of history teachers lately, and when I tell them about my favorite history stories to teach or the things that I'm going over in my classes, often the reaction I get is, I've never heard of that before. I didn't understand that had even happened. Because the history that we teach is the history that is not really taught. And I think that's one of the reasons that students are engaged and they keep coming back, because they're not going to get this anywhere except with us. We are the only ones who focus on these things that are just forgotten, just left behind.
Wow. And I think it's also one of those things too, when we think about traditional educational systems, right, or institutions, being able to meet, a variety of different standards, in regards to the quality of the curriculum, the actual topics that are being taught, not being in a position where you teach something that's too controversial. It sounds like, with the idea of Academy of Wonder, you guys are very authentic, not being afraid to, take education in a place where, it reminds us of this authenticity, the idea of, these stories, the idea of the why. Could you tell us a little bit more, in regards to, educational systems, today, and how, with the Academy of Wonder, any plans or any, ways of being able to continue, your growth?
Mm-hmm. So, when you think about education, it is very concerning to me whenever you have to link the words history and politics together. Politicians should not get to define history. They shouldn't get to say, well, yes, that happened, but we're not going to talk about that. Or yes, that happened, but can we pretend that it didn't? And we see that happening in public schools all the time. It's not that public teachers aren't exceptionally wonderful, that they're not really, really wanting to share the stories that I am getting to share, but they have to teach to a test. They have a very set curriculum to meet state standards, and those things may not include the same things that I think are valuable and that I think should be learned and should be taught. And so there's a lot of difference between what Academy of Wonder does and what you're going to get in a typical school curriculum. And because I'm an independent, because it is not something that is state funded or state run, I don't really have to worry about the things that typical history teachers have to worry about, because I don't have those same laws and legislations that are making me have to curtail what it is that I am teaching. Right? So I can have a class about LGBTQ issues in a history course. And that's not something that's state regulated, because I am not a state school. I am my own thing. I am my own kind of thing. So I can teach Black history. I can teach about minority communities. I can teach amazing history classes about poverty, and how that has related to how the world has evolved. I can teach about the Radium Girls. I can teach things that other people cannot teach just because of how we are set up and how we're run. And are we going to expand in the future in different ways? That is just the way that life works. I'm sure that we will. What that's going to look like, I think that's always evolving. What I imagine it might look like 10 years from now might be completely different than what it really looks like 10 years from now. But what I can say is we will always try to keep student needs in mind and to grow into the future to help them be successful and engaged and thoughtful, and to build their creativity and their critical thinking, because those are two things that are also built in to my classes. I want my students to engage in a really deep level so that they can critically think about things that have happened in the past. And so when they're making the decisions in the future, when they are the leaders, they can look back and go, I remember this story back when I was in history mysteries or dark history. And this is how they made those decisions. And maybe those decisions weren't the right ones to make. And maybe they'll make a new one.
And I think, it's one of those things that when we think about the idea of critical thinking and, deep thinking, right? Because a lot of time, when we think about, our society, with like this idea of instant gratification, the idea of technology playing such a strong role in, the lack of patience, certain aspects of, okay, well, if I'm going to be able to see it or find it on Google, then it's going to be okay. And when we think about the idea of AI, right? Before you had mentioned about, the different classes that you offer about, minority groups, LGBT, could you tell us more about how you navigate those discussions with your students so that way, it doesn't become too controversial, or maybe it is controversial, but being
It
able
is controversial.
to navigate it in a meaningful way.
I would love to say that I navigate it very, very carefully, but the honest truth is I don't. What I do is I allow kids to talk about it. And I tell them what it is we're learning, what they're going to be exposed to, what's going to come up that might cause them concern. And I tell them at any point in time, we can stop and talk about it. There's really nothing more, because that's really what they need. They need someone who's an adult who says, it's okay to not be sure exactly what you believe or exactly what you think or exactly what you stand for, because we are all people who are in the process of becoming our next new person, the next new version of us. And that person might be different. It might be evolving or emerging. And so one of the ways to evolve and emerge is to talk about what we're thinking, why we're thinking about it, how we're thinking about it, and what new ideas might be coming in that are making us question those things. I'm not telling any of my students what to think or how to think it. That's where the critical thinking comes in. I expect them to figure this out for themselves. But what I am doing is opening the conversations that maybe they're not having in a different kind of situation. And certainly that they're not having in the public schools, because there isn't the space for these conversations in the public schools. Again, no fault of the public school system. It's simply not how it's designed.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think these types of classes and, these types of discussions are so important, in regards to, moving forward, in education, right? Especially, considering, how students are feeling, the idea of, certain issues, the idea of bullying happening in schools, being able to find alternatives of being able to, learn in a safe environment, which is something that you've mentioned before. One of the things, I know that you have your family. Could you talk about that, actually? Because you have your family teaching.
I do.
You have them all working.
I do. They all work. They all are working for me. So my daughter, who is off in college for engineering, teaches our Drawing Cute Animals class. She's a very clever artist. She's very, very good at painting and drawing. So she is teaching Drawing Cute Animals. She also teaches Minecraft because she's a gamer. And that is not my forte, but it is hers. And she's teaching our balloon twisting classes because, of course, the entire family is balloon twisters, which was my first class on Outschool, by the way. I tried a balloon twisting class. That's my very first class I taught. But, and then when I realized that I was just so tired because I could not keep up with the number of classes that I was teaching, I said to my husband, would you like to quit your job at prison and just teach for me? And he's like, sure. So he took over our 5 Nights at Freddy's classes. Now you might be going, oh my gosh, who would teach a horror game? Like, what could you possibly do? It is the most amazing class for the kids who are in it. It is the most amazing class. So a lot of our students have ADHD or autism, not all of them, but a large majority, I'd say probably 80 to 90%. And they need a safe place to discuss fear and to learn how to get along with each other and to express their creativity and to focus on something that they love, because a lot of these kids can hyperfixate on something. They find this thing that they love and then they can talk about it till their parents feel like they may explode. And as parents who had that child, we're like, let's give other parents an outlet for their child to come and talk about it with someone else. So we created this for our child, who is actually in this picture right here. And those who are 5 Nights at Freddy's fans will be like, oh, that's the grand opening for the new FNAF movie. Why, yes, it is. And we were there in cosplay because that is how our family rolls. So, all of our classes are deeply meaningful for us. And because they're meaningful for us, we knew they would be meaningful for other families too, who are just like our families. They're looking for places for their kids to be safe and welcome and cared about and to get to express themselves and be valued for exactly who they are, exactly how they are. I don't need to change them. I don't need to fix them. They're not broken. They just need a place to be themselves. And that's what we've created.
And I think that's amazing, because of the fact that, when we think about, certain structures, I'm not, not by any means like knocking, public school, private school, any type of structure, right? But being able to be in a place where you feel safe, because sometimes, the hard part about the internet is that sometimes the internet can be a mean place, right? And, when we think about the bullying back in the day, bullying isn't, writing bad things to another person, putting gum in some kid's hair, like that was the old school bullying. But now with like the new technologies that we have today, I just feel like sometimes, those aspects, because I know you had mentioned, the idea of internet safety also, like it are one of your classes.
Yeah. So I have my master's in educational technology. And while I was getting that, one of the things that I did was I got my Common Core, common safety trainings in. So I went and I became a common sense ambassador, which was a big, big process. And one of the big things that we do is we focus on internet safety, teaching students how to be smart online. Because here's the thing, you said something earlier about, there's so much tech and there's so much AI and there's so much this. My standpoint is we're not going to stop kids from using that. In fact, we need to teach them how to use it safely and smart so that they can navigate that, because they're not going to get less technologically savvy as we go. The world is not going to suddenly reverse course and we're not going to have computers anymore. Like, it's going to get more. So we have to learn how to navigate that in smart, safe ways. And when you're talking about online bullying, the biggest difference is you can never escape it. You can't go on a vacation from online bullies. You can't go home without your phone dinging to notify you that someone's posted something mean online. And it can spread virally. So instead of, maybe a small group of maybe even 5 or 10 people in a bad situation in school bullying one person, it can spread to thousands or hundreds of thousands of people all ganging in on one person. So the level that cyberbullying can get to is so extreme. Often when we talk about bullying that's happening in schools, we forget about the fact that part of it is also happening once that child is going home, because now everybody has access to this online world. So the bullying never stops. You never get to disengage from it. And it's really, really harmful for students. And so, yes, one of the classes that we teach is, how to identify scams, how to handle cyberbullies, how to handle stranger danger online, right? Basically, how do you identify predators? What do they want? How are they tricking people? What about gaming addiction? Like, how do you know whether or not you have a problem with your gaming? Lots of people do, but how do you know when that is? It's not like, hey, every person who's ever gamed has a gaming addiction. That's not accurate either. So, the class is designed to really help students navigate all aspects of being online.
No,
and realistically, looking at the fact that you're going to be online, like, how do you do that in a smart way?
No, and I think, I think that's great, being responsible too, right? In regards to all of those parts, because, the world has changed so much in regards to, how kids experience school or any school system, right? It's not just, public institutions or even private ones or even homeschool situations, right? It's just in different shapes and forms, because you're a parent, and, you have a great family, with your husband working with you and you putting everyone to work, right? In regards to, the parents, if you were to, talk to the parents about, your courses and, the things that you could provide to their kids, right? What would you say to those people?
I think it is accessible learning in a fun, engaging atmosphere for any and all students. Like, they're going to walk away having learned something, but also having a great time.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Nicole. So make sure to check out her courses, Academy of Wonder. Was it .com, right?
Is it .com or is it .edu?
.edu. I think it was .edu. Hang on, let me.
I believe it might be .edu.
No. Sorry. Academyofwonder.org, right?
.org. There we go.
Yes, .org. Sorry, Nicole.
I knew it was. It's okay. I knew it was something not .com.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, okay, excellent. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into Homeschool EduTopics with Dr. Kristine Dizon, where we explore the journey of homeschooling together, sharing insights, strategies, and stories to empower your teaching and enrich your homeschool experience. If you found value in today's episode and want to be part of our growing community, here's how you can join in. Subscribe to Homeschool EduTopics on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss out on our weekly episodes full of tips, resources, and inspiring conversations. Share this podcast with friends and fellow homeschoolers who might benefit from our community, whether through social media, word of mouth, or by leaving us a review. Your support helps us reach more families and make a bigger impact. Engage with us. Visit our website at www.musicandlanguagecenter.com to access additional resources, join our newsletter, or submit your homeschooling questions and stories. We love hearing from you and often feature listener insights in our episodes. Together, we can create a more connected, informed, and vibrant homeschooling community. So hit subscribe, spread the word, and let's make the most of our homeschooling adventure together. Until next time, keep learning and keep inspiring.